Okay, so there are people who try to say that they try to take the argument between the Prussian, the Saducean, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees, and direct it back to the time of the Hashmonaim and make the battle between the Yavanim, the Greeks, and the Hashmonaim, the Maccabees, into a battle between Saducean and Prussian. That has historical problems with that argument.
I was wondering about that.
Right. That makes sense.
No.
Did they occur at different times?
Yes. Was right at the end of the Beit HaMikdash.
Well, Saducean and Prussian were Sadak. I mean, from a halakha perspective,
Saducean and Prussian were at the end of the Beit HaMikdash.
They were at the end of the Beit HaMikdash, right. But they were before also. I mean, Sadak and Bostas, who were the Talmidim of Antigone Sofa. And then Shimon Sadak. The question is that timing there? But it doesn't seem to really connect to the story.
3 generations, I think.
A few generations, but
or something.
Right.
Harkness and then his son and his grandson. I think it was his son that went and attacked his own son, and that brought in
the Romans.
The Romans.
Right. But that might already be the battle between the Sadducees and Pharisees might have started towards the end of the Hashmonaim period, which is when that occurred. But the fact is if you look, but the objective is, for many people, is to present the argument like between the Sadducees and Pharisees. The argument was over the oral law. So people who want to project back that this was the Battle of Chanukah. But that's very difficult to do. The Battle of Chanukah was really between Hellenists and Traditionalists. Chanukah was really a civil war. That's where it started off. It started off as a civil war. What occurred is it was very strange for Hellenists to oppress because of religion. Hellenism, wherever they were, basically their modus operandi was just simply, as long as you pay the taxes, you can do anything you want. They were very, very welcoming. The reason that Hellenism spread throughout the ancient world was because of the value of the philosophy. Hellenism was a very sophisticated philosophy, and it basically overran the paganism of the ancient world because of its sophistication, because of its value as a philosophy. But it came against the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. You started having a little bit of resistance because the Jews already had their own sophisticated philosophy of Torah. What occurred is that there was a battle between Jews, a civil war, and the Hellenist Jews went to Antiochus to ask them to support them. And their argument is that these traditionalist Jews will not be supportive, they'll rebel against you. We're the good Hellenist Jews, so please back us up. And it was from the civil war where the one side went to the Syrian Greeks to bring Antiochus in. That's how the Syrian Greeks got involved, and that's how the whole story developed into a rebellion, full-fledged revolution and rebellion. Okay, but the fact is, it started as a civil war. It's a very interesting article written a few years ago by a Reform rabbi in town, Rabbi Elise Goldstein.
Oh yeah, I know her well.
She wrote an article a few years back, where her article is, "We can't let Maccabees kill Hellenists anymore." Okay, and she basically attacks the Orthodox and said we can't allow the Orthodox to oppress Reform Jews anymore.
Does that mean she doesn't believe in Chanukah?
That's a good question. That was a question
really
I had.
Everybody celebrates
right,
Chanukah.
but she gets this idea from the Book of Maccabees. Right, there's a thing in the Book of Maccabees where at the end of the whole battle, it seems when the traditionalists did take over, when the Hashmonaim took over, there was oppression of the Hashmonaim. In other words, we all know the story of the person how the Assyrians were forcing people to bow down to the idols, and Matisyahu basically says "Mi Hashem Elai" and kills one of the people. No, it was Matisyahu, right.
Right, wasn't it what the daughter Yehudis?
Yeah, but that's something different. We'll get to that also, but that's.
I did discuss that with my son today.
Right.
Something at Archive.
Right, but the fact is that. But the point is that there was persecution of the traditionalist Jews, which we all talk about. We all talk about Chanukah as freedom of religion, but the fact is applying the concept of freedom of religion to Chanukah is really a misapplication, because when the Maccabees did win, they weren't too tolerant of Hellenism either, and they weren't too tolerant of paganism, which fits into a Jewish perspective, which is not too tolerant of paganism. But the argument that actually Rabbi Tern, actually, my co-authored an article is basically his, but he wanted me to put my name on it also. He basically presents an argument that when we're not persecuted, when the Jewish people aren't persecuted, we will in turn we're not forcing others to come to our religion. But if we're forced, in other words, the Maccabees would not have been so oppressive about pushing the Torah religion upon the Hellenists, which they did after they won, if the Hellenists did not originally persecute them. But the fact is, if you're being persecuted, you don't turn around at the end and then say, hey, if you're not going to let us practice freedom of religion and you're going to oppress us, we're not going to apply this kind of value to let you get stronger and then turn against us again. In other words, a certain idea. So it's true, he argues, that and it's clear historical fact that when the Hashmonaim did take over, they weren't very tolerant of Hellenism and the paganism of Hellenism, but that was a reaction to the fact that the pagans originally.
Well, you just said originally that they were allowing people to practice freely.
The Greeks.
Yeah, that's what the Hellenists were. That's why it started with the Jews. And there was Hellenism, the Greek Hellenists, the Greeks. They let everyone do what they want.
Why was there a civil war with the Jews? Why was there
because the Jews themselves. What happened was there was a conflict within the Jews. You see, in the Jewish nation itself, there was a tremendous conflict.
For a lack of a better comparison, like Reform Orthodox type of thing.
Yeah, and that's what at least Goldstein.
So they got, but still, how did it get to the point of real war?
Because there was a lot of friction. There was a lot of friction. There was a lot of battles who would become gadol, and who would be the administrator, and who would be the governor, and so forth and so forth. But eventually, the ones who wanted to take the Hellenists wanted to take over went to Antiochus and frightened Antiochus that the others were going to rebel. So therefore Antiochus sends a Syrian army in to support the Hellenists, and in their civil war take over the country. Okay? And that's really where the persecution came from.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah. But the fact is the Civil War was just for Jews. Right. So
sorry, one quick question I had is, the Book of the Maccabees is not part of the Tanakh, is it?
No.
So why is she basing her arguments on a Christian book?
Well, okay.
Well, it's not a Christian book either, but it's not part of Tanakh. Yeah.
It's not part of Tanakh.
It's Jewish history.
Yeah.
But is it like a fact or a book that someone wrote?
It's a...
Who's the author of it?
Just because the book doesn't mean that's true history.
Okay. The fact is it may be true. That may be correct. The Book of Maccabees is a book that was written. It's part of the Apocrypha, which makes it part of the Christian Bible, at least part of the Catholic Christian Bible. Mm-hmm. But the fact is it's part of the Apocrypha, therefore we can challenge it and say, hey, who says it's true? And that's true. But it's like any other history book. It's another history book of that time. Why this Reform rabbi is turning to that history book is the same reason why she will turn to other books written at that time to you know. I mean, if you're going to look at, you're going to look at Josephus, you look at what Philos writes and so on. So she looked at that book and she said, hey, you see, the person who wrote this book basically says the Hashmonaim were oppressors of the Hellenist Jews. What she was trying to say, the Hellenist Jews were like the Reform Jews, which basically was the people who are enlightened and looking at the science and philosophy of the time.
She celebrates Chanukah.
Yeah,
I'm sure she does. I imagine.
But she seems to be against the whole victory.
But that's what I found strange. I remember
But if
asking
there
that.
would be a Sanhedrin or something like that, a high court, they wouldn't tolerate.
No. The truth is that it's very interesting.
It's intolerance.
Well, the fact is that it's a very interesting question about the nature of tolerance of the Jewish people. On the surface, I mean, this is a whole different issue. On the surface, you look in the book, look in Tanakh, you look at Yehoshua, the book of Yehoshua. Jews didn't look too tolerant. Basically, went in and said, "It's our way or the highway," and that was the way it was. But the fact is that really was supported by the fact that that the presence of God was known. In terms of everything else, even in terms of the Sanhedrin, there seems to have been a major distinction between laws that were necessary to maintain society, murder, theft, and so forth, that the Jewish courts were pretty well enforced, and they would take it, and enforcement was not just 2 eyewitnesses and so forth. In terms of all the other laws, you had to have 2 eyewitnesses, and you had 2 eyewitnesses who had to give Hasra. There's actually a Rishon. I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it might be the Rosh, but there was a major Rishon who says that really, whenever there was a death penalty in Jewish law, it wasn't because you were Machal Shabbos. It wasn't because of the actual act that you did. Is that in order to get the death penalty, the person had to warn you, God said don't do that. And you had to say, not, I don't believe God said that. You had to say, Afal Pikain, even though I know God said not to do it, right, I'm going to do it anyways. And in the language of the Rishon, he says, all they had to do was keep quiet, and they wouldn't be subject to the death penalty. What kind of person wants to say in front of 2 witnesses, Afal PK, knowing that this will open up the death penalty? So he says it really is an aspect of lachachis. It's a matter of doing it just to attack God and so forth. And that's really what brings out the death penalty. It's basically like using certain expletives or certain hand expressions to God. And that is pretty bad. But the fact is that generally, except in situations where it was necessary to maintain the functioning of society, Jewish courts did not really punish the necessity. I mean, you do have other cases where if there was a massive breakdown of certain laws. I mean, there was this case of Shimon ben Shetach where he executed a bunch of witches on one day, which was connected halacha. But the fact is that if there's a total breakdown of the societal rules, of the Torah rules, then there might be action taken as well. But it was basically, the only time action was taken was for the needs of society. But on an individual basis, there was a certain aspect of tolerance in the Jewish world. We basically, I mean, if you look through the sources, it's very, very interesting. If you look through the sources throughout the halachic process, it's absolutely fascinating. Here were the Jews getting persecuted and getting attacked and so forth, and you had halachic scholars developing arguments for why the non-Jews should not be held accountable for their transgression of Noahide laws. Now, some of it was for the service of the Jewish community. I mean, the fact is that, for example, the argument is, how can you enter into business with a pagan? There are certain limitations on contractual relations with the pagan and so forth and so forth. So the argument that Christianity is not paganism was a significant argument to allow for there to be freer monetary transactions between Jews and non-Jews. But even prior to that, there's a statement by an early Rishon who basically said that it's not really avodah zarah, it's minhag avosehem biyadehem. Like we always think of minhag avoseinu biyadenu, that the customs of our forefathers in our hands. So he says minhag avosehem biyadehem. Not that they really believe in this paganism, but they're doing this. They're doing it, but it's not real paganism. Which was really an attempt to say that they're not so bad. And so there was a real strong intent, and this tolerance comes out in so many different ways. It comes out in terms of the attitudes to Jews. I mean, even the Chazon Ish comes out and says there's no such thing as a real apikoros or min today, because there's no nisim galuyim, therefore there's no open miracles, therefore there's no absolute proof of the existence of God, therefore no one's a real min that you have to really act against him in computational matter.
Convinced.
Yeah. Okay. And the fact is, you see this also. The famous Rashi in the Gemara Shabbos. You all have this. Everyone knows the case of the non-Jew who comes to Shammai and says, teach me Torah on one foot, right, on one leg. So Shammai kicks him out, goes to Hillel, and Hillel says that it's that basically the other way around. But okay, there are actually there's three stories in the Gemara Shabbos. There's actually three stories of non-Jews who come to convert. The first one is about Torah Sheba'al Peh and Torah Sheba'al where the non-Jew comes and says, Shammai, how many Torahs are there? And Shammai says 2, Torah Sheba'al and Torah Sheba'al Peh. So the non-Jew says, convert me on the condition that I only accept Torah Sheba'al. So Shammai kicks him out. Actually, Gemara says he took his it was his measuring rod. Shammai seemed to have been a builder. He took his plane and smashed the guy. Okay, he wasn't very happy with this guy. Okay, Hillel said, sure, no problem. So he said, and the Gemara says that he was Megayer him, even though he did not accept Torah Sheba'al Peh. Then what Hillel does, he comes the next day and he says, okay, first thing you have to do is learn the Aleph base. So this is an Aleph, this is a Beit, this is a Gimel, go Dalet, this is the way you pronounce it, and he says, okay, go home and study. So the guy goes home and study, he comes back the next day and says, I know it, Aleph, Beit, and I said, that's not an Aleph, that's a Taf. So the base, that's not a base, that's a Shin. The guy says, no, that's not a Gimel, it's a Reish. So the guy says, what are you telling me? Yesterday you told me Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet. Now you're telling me there are different names and different sounds and so forth and so forth. He says, what are you doing? So Hill says, if you believe me on what the Aleph and the base is, then believe me when I tell you there's a Torah Sheba'al Peh as well as a Torah Sheba'al. What Hill was basically saying to him is that any printed document, the value of a printed document only comes from the belief you have in the person who describes the printed document. The fact that you know the Bible is holy is because someone told you the Bible is holy. Even though the Bible says, hi, I'm a holy book, you have no idea. It's someone telling you should believe what the Bible says and so forth. Therefore, you have to trust the person who tells you something. So Torah Sheba'al Peh is always first. You always have to have a transmission of someone who you believe in, who tells you that anything about a printed document. So that's what Hillel convinced this person. But anyways, the reason I'm getting to the story is that it says in the Gemara that he was Megayer him. So, and this is big nogay in the whole issues in Israel now, with Geras and so forth and so forth. So there's a problem. How was he Megayer him? He didn't accept Torah Sheba'al Peh. If you don't accept Torah Sheba'al Peh, it means you cannot follow halacha correctly. Right? You can't follow halacha. So how was he Megayer him? So some people say it doesn't mean he was Megayer him. It means that he agreed to convert him, and he started the teaching process. But not that he Megayer him. But Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi said he was Megayer him, even though he didn't believe in Torah Sheba'al Peh, because Hillel believed in himself that he would eventually teach the guy the truth, and the guy would eventually become a full believing Jew in Torah Sheba'al Peh. But the point is, you're not allowed to be Megayer someone who's a kaifer b'davar echad, who rejects one aspect of Torah. So Rashi says something fascinating. He says it wasn't because he was a kaifer. He just didn't believe in it. Okay, in other words, it's not the fact that he was someone who was rejecting it. He just didn't believe in it. Fascinating Rashi. What does that mean? I mean, so it seems to imply that if you just don't believe, it's not the same as denial or rejecting it. It seems to be simply a concept of opening yourself up to education, and that Rashi says that, and therefore he'll believe this guy would be educated, and therefore he was willing to convert him. It's a fascinating Rashi, and it's very nogea to all the issues in Eretz Yisrael nowadays, all the issues of conversion nowadays. Anyways, we've moved away, but the fact is that the point being how did I get off on this topic? The fact is, there's a certain tolerance. The fact is that the Jewish world did accept this tolerance. The thing is, at least Goldstein's book, quoting the book of Maccabees, which you can question whether that was an honest book, a truthful book or not, right? Okay, that's a fair question.
She has to make claims based on our Jewish heritage, not on a Gentile book.
Well, no, it's not really Gentile. It's not really Gentile. It's a history book, mostly written by Jews.
Well, the narrator is a Jew. That's what he claims. That we, he's talking about.
But she's not coming from our own heritage. She's coming from the outside.
But you can't find anything in Tanakh about Hanukkah. It's not there.
In the Talmud, I thought there is.
The fact is, what you're getting at is really going to be where we're going right now.
The fact is
that what you're getting at is the difference in the story of Chanukah within the rabbinic tradition, i.e., the Torah tradition, our tradition, and the academics. And the real problem with Chanukah, if you ever see academics, it's very funny about academics. They always look for the first place that they have a source, a written source. And then they make the assumption that you can't prove that something which was dated at 342 CE, we don't know for sure if this idea existed, because all we have, the first time we have it written, was in 342 CE. But it's quite possible it was around for 500 years. It just was oral. Especially if within the Jewish idea that the oral tradition was the essence of the Jewish tradition. But you'll see from academics, they always look for the earliest written source for something and date it. And the earliest written source of the mitzvah of the candles of Hanukkah is the Gemara in Shabbos. Okay, the Mishnah doesn't even The Mishnah talks about Hanukkah candles, but the first mention of the miracles is here. In the book of Maccabees, there's no mention of the miracles. Mm-hmm. There's no mention of the miracle of the Nero. The truth is we have our own problem with that, and that's where we're going to get it right. The first part is because in our Al Hanisim, there is also no mention of the miracle of the Nero. So that's where we're going to start off with. But the truth is academics, and it could have been a Jewish writer as well. It wasn't something from Chazal, but the fact is this person like that. But obviously within the Reform movement, they don't treat Chazal with the same perception that we do. So they treat the book of Maccabees mostly as much as they would treat another book. Okay, so that's just the way it is. But the point is that he does say this aspect about the Maccabees, the Maccabees when they did persecute the Hellenists. But even if they did, it mostly was only a response to the fact that the Hellenists mistreated them, and they didn't want to. If someone's going to come against us, we're not going to then turn around and say, okay, we're going to let you build up, so you can come back and attack us again.
That's right?
Okay.
Right, yes. You can see the analogy. Yes.
So excuse my ignorance for it, but is there anything in the Talmud that speaks about the Civil War too?
Okay, we're going to get to that. We'll see the language of the Talmud. Okay. So we're going to start with the Gemara in Shabbos. Gemara in Shabbos starts with my Chanukah. The red light's still on over there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If you see that red light go away, let me know. Okay. My Chanukah.
Yes.
Okay, so this is it's down over here towards the end of the page. It's three lines from the bottom. Okay, my Chanukah, and this is Chafal from the base. This is Gemara Shabbos 21b. Okay, my Chanukah. B'tanu Rabbanan b'chafei b'kislev Yomei de Chanukah. What's this Chanukah that we learned? That on the 25th day of Kislev we have these days of Chanukah. Now there's an interesting aspect why the Gemara asked this question out, because we've already been discussing some aspects of the lights of Chanukah beforehand. But however, the Gemara asks this question is, what is this Chanukah? So if you look at Rashi says, what's the Gemara's question? He says, my Chanukah, al ezen nes kavuha. On what miracle was it established? Okay, in other words, why do we have this day? What was the cause of this day? Because we don't have it in Tanakh. And if you notice the way most people, the way Gemara works is there's always a perception that the Gemara is referring back to a pasuk or something. Here there's no source. So we're talking about this. Where does it come from? So obviously it comes from Torah Shabbat Peh. And what is the nest that starts? And what is this Chanukah? The Timne Inan de lo Misped Bahon v'lo Hizanis Bahon. 8 days that we don't do Hespedim, and we don't do fast days. Okay? So the fact is what's this Chanukah? And that's really what Chanukah is. It's 8 days. It's not 8 days of festival. Okay? It's 8 days that we simply don't do Hespedim and don't fast. Otherwise they're regular days. Okay? But somehow there's a little bit of a lull or something where we don't allow for too much depression on these days, but it's not like a great celebration.
It's a simcha, but it's not the same simcha like Yom Tov.
Yeah, the fact that's it's a very interesting question. It's actually machlokas and poskim. The Ramah paskins that Masibas and Mishtes on Chanukah are okay, but the Beis Yosef doesn't say that. So the fact is, in the interesting, in the Rambam's language, he does say simcha. We'll see that in a sec. But the fact is, in the Gemara's language, it doesn't say simcha. Okay? Which is interesting. I always find this very interesting because I remember one time, there was a rabbi in Kingston, New York at the time, and they were talking to some non-Jews, and this person was talking about 3 major festivals of the Jewish calendar. Right? What are the 3 major festivals of the Jewish calendar?
Passover.
Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Well, Passover, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. That's one period of time. And Chanukah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Chanukah. It's like one of the major festivals. I had to explain to this person that really.
Yeah, it's a
okay.
very common exception.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. It's like,
but it's good because it keeps a lot of people who.
It's called balance.
It's interesting. Yeah. If you're interested, on my website I have an article that talks about Chanukah being a remarkable irony, because Chanukah is supposed to be marking that we're not going to be affected by outside influences.
Yes.
Right? And yet Chanukah is the holiday most influenced by the outside world. So the celebration of us not being influenced by the outside world is, I should say, or what that celebration is the holiday that is most influenced by the outside world. So you can look. Anyways, it's somewhere on my website. Okay, on the Nishma website. Okay. So he says why? When the Greeks went into the Beis Hamikdash, they were metame, they defiled all the oils bechechel. Okay, so they basically defiled the oils, and this defiling all the oils basically means that they defiled the temple. They tried to attack the spiritual essence of Judaism. Kashagavra Malchus based Hashmonaim, but when the Hashmonaim dynasty took over and were with Nishma and were victorious, big kuvelomatsu alapach echad shel shemen. They only found 1 vial of oil, shahaya moneh chodma shel Kohen Gadol, that was stamped with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, indicating that it wasn't broken and therefore it was not matame. It was not tameh. Okay, it only was going to last 1 day. Nasa bon nes, because Baruch did a miracle. It was a miracle. Okay, and it lasted 8 days. Okay, the Shana Acheres, sometime into the future. They didn't establish it right away. Sometime in the future, I heard someone says that this was. Actually, I heard this from Rabbi Malevsky. He actually said that he argued that this is common, that you want to see if there's some everlasting meaning to an event. Something happens right away, you feel good about it. So it happens a few years later. If you think back to it and it has some kind of meaning every time this time period comes around, then you know it has lasting significance. Kavon ba'ashem yomim tovim, they made yomim tovim, b'halel uhudah, in terms of praising God and thanking God. It's interesting, halel uhudah doesn't say simcha. There seems to be other girsot that do include simcha, but they made yomim tovim. Okay. of halal hodam. So the Gemara here says it is based upon the miracle of the candles. Okay, but if you look at the Al-Nisim, right? Okay, you can read. You just run through the paragraph of Al-Nisim very quickly. Let's see what it says. Okay. When the evil Greeks stood against the Jewish people, to wipe out Torah, to stray them from from God's laws, and you, with your great mercy, you stood with the Jews in a time of trouble. You took care of these Greeks. You stood up to their laws. Okay, but to come to nikmatam, and you basically took revenge against the Greeks. You put the strong in the hands of the weak. Rabin biyad matim. Okay. Of the many in the hands of little, Thu May biyad torim, and the defiled in the hands of the pure, Rishayim biyad tzadikim, and the righteous in the hands of the evildoers in the hands of the righteous. B'zeidim biyad oski techa, and strayers in the hands of the people really involved in Torah. L'cha asita shem gadol v'kodesh b'lamecha, and you made a great name for yourself in the world. L'amchi Yisrael asita trua gadol, and you saved the Jewish people. And this stays with him to this day. Okay. Then Jews came to the temple. They cleaned the place with they purified it. And they lit candles in the base of Mikdash. And they made the Chanukah for 8 days in order to praise God's name. There's no mention of the miracle of the candles. There's mention of the nerot that they lit the nerot because that was a significant aspect of the base of Mikdash. The menorah was a significant part of the base of Mikdash, but no idea of the miracle. According to Al-Nisim, what was the miracle? The miracle was
the victory.
What? Yeah, right. The victory.
Right. It says 8 days, but they don't really explain why 8 days. It could be 1 day.
No. And you know why? You know how academics get 8 days. Right? It's very interesting how academics get 8 days, because they say what the Greeks did is they didn't allow the Jews to celebrate the holiday of Sukkot. That was the immediate thing that really got everyone really upset. So once they cleaned out the temple and so forth and so forth, what they did is they celebrated Sukkot, which biblically is even 8 days. When you take Sukkot and Shemini Atzeres, it's 8 days. The thing that's interesting about that is if you know the Machlokas Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, where you light 8 days, you light whether you go 1 to 8 or Moshe or you go down. One of the arguments for Beis Shammai is that from Sukkot the Karmanos go down. So the question here is why does Shammai go back to a comparison to Sukkot? So the academics like to say, you see, that's the reason why, because they wanted to make it like they wanted to bring in the idea of Sukkot. Anyways, that's a nice happy person. Okay, but anyways, the fact is that the question is why 8 days. So the academics have their argument. They say this is the real essence of the thing. The Jews won, not even by miracle. They just won, and they won, and therefore they celebrated the freedom from the world. But the truth is, even with us, we say there was a miracle, the miracle that they won. But what does it? Okay. But how do you reconcile the two? Okay. Now, before we reconcile the two, we're also going to look at the Rambam. Because the Rambam throws another monkey wrench into this whole thing. Okay? But he adds another element to this, which is very fascinating. Okay? So, B'bayit Sheni, in the second temple, Shemalcha Yavin Gazuk Zeres al Yisrael, the time of religious persecution, Bitul Datam, and attacked their religion, V'hoinicha Otam L'asar B'Torah Mitzvahs, and didn't allow them to be involved in Torah mitzvahs. Upashi Yadam B'Memodim V'Noseihem, and they stretch a hand on their money and on their daughters. Okay, that's the story of Yehudis, and we'll get to that in a second. And they came into the temple, process with Timotara. So they basically defiled the temple. There was great pain for the Jewish people because of them. And there was tremendous oppression until God had mercy upon them and saved them. Okay, to save them. And the Bnei Hashmonaim, who were the family of the high priest, he killed them and saved the Jews. And he established a king from the Kohanim, and re-established the kingdom to Israel, for 200 years, until the destruction of the second temple. Okay, then the Rabbi will go into and when the Jews did defeat the enemies, they defeated them on the 25th. It was the 25th of Kislev. They came into the temple. I should say that this, by the way, is in the Rambam Hilchos Chanukah Per Gimel. The first halach in Per Gimel. They couldn't find any oil to light the menorah. Ella pach echad, except for this one vial. There was only enough to light one for 1 day. Bilbad. And they were able to light wicks that lasted 8 days. Until they were able to press new oil and bring out proper oil. So the Rambam does talk about the oil, but he first talks about the war. But he throws a tremendous other aspect into it, that we're celebrating the reestablishment of the Jewish monarchy, even though that monarchy was not perfect, even though the monarchy was not the establishment of the Davidic line. It was the Kohanim usurping the Malchus, and there were problems with it. The fact is that for close to 200 years, we had a Jewish commonwealth. And that was the ultimate result. And therefore, that's what we are celebrating. Which is a fascinating concept. The Gemara doesn't say that, the Al-Nisim doesn't say that, but the Rambam throws in and says that was the final thing. It can't just be the victory. It has to be the fact that this victory had a lasting significance of establishing the Jewish commonwealth. Okay? In case you're all going to say that Rambam was a Zionist, we're not going to go there.
He doesn't use the word miracle either.
Well, he doesn't for the. It's interesting that in the second one he doesn't really say. It just says it lasted 8 days.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. But the fact is that then he goes on to say it, but he doesn't really use. But the fact that he won is a miracle, and the fact that there was something where it lasted 8 days would seem to be something miraculous about that. But he doesn't use the word names. Okay. Now, that's really that becomes significant. So what's the Rambam? So now we have three aspects. We have the Rambam bringing down the first two. First two are two separate statements, each one excluding the other. The Gemara does mention the war, but it seems to be secondary. The big thing is the 8 days, 8 days. The Al-Nisim doesn't even mention the miracle of the 8 days, and the Rambam seems to conclude with this major aspect of nationalism. Okay, so what really is Chanukah? Okay, so the Maral offers an interesting perspective. Okay, so this is Maral in the Chudash Agadot on the Gemara and Shabbos. Okay, and he presents an interesting way of combining the miracle of the war with the miracle of the oil. He says, this one over here, right?
Oh, okay.
Okay, Vein Tomer, Okay, is it really just because there was this miracle with the lighting? Well, it has a rak lasod mitzvahs hadlaka. If it was just because of this lighting, it should have just created a mitzvah of lighting a menorah. You want to remember the mitzvah. Hey, Kovim Chanukah, but they established special days. And when we have a nace that requires of us to thank God and to praise Him, it's because He saved us. Okay? Okay? In other words, what he's saying is if it was just to light a mitzvah, just because they did this next, the oil and the mitzvah, that's not a way to establish Chanukah. That's not a reason to establish Chanukah. When you have days of Hodas Hallel, it has to be because you're thanking God for something. That's what Hallel is about. That's what Hodah is about. Thank you. So just for the miracle? Okay. Okay? And he says, V'raya, ki ba'ala nisim moskir ha'nei shel neros klal. And he says, and what's the proof? In the Al Nisim, we don't even mention this miracle. The Yeshlomer. So how do you understand it, the Gemara's reference to the miracle? She'ikar ma shekavu yimei Chanukah mishvil ma shenitzko et Yavanim. The essence of the celebration of Chanukah, why they established Chanukah, was because we were saved from the Greeks. However, it wasn't clearly apparent that this was because of a miracle that God did. Maybe the Maccabees were just good guerrilla warfare. Okay? Okay, and it was from their own abilities that done. It wasn't because of God. But Ofikach Nasa Haneis Aidei Haneros Menorah Shiyad Shakol Hayav Daneis Hamachama Gamkein. So why did God do the miracle of the oil? To make it clear that the fact that you beat the Greeks was because of a miracle. It was really, it's the miracle of the victory of the war that we have Chanukah. But for you guys to know that it was a miracle, here's a much more open miracle. So now, because I can recognize that, it's an open miracle. Okay, that even what happened there was a miracle. But and basically, why was this test done with the oil? The essence of what the Greeks wanted to do, what they really showed in terms of their evil, was the fact that they were matama the heichel. They defiled the heichel. That's what the Al-Nisra, everyone talks about how they went in and defiled the temple. That was the essence of their evil. Okay, the Mizrach Shatzu Anshe Yavin, it talks about how the stones of the Mizbeach were made disgusting by the men of Yavin. They become Makomas and so forth. Basically, the essence of what the Yavanim did was a way to defile the temple. And therefore God responded by a miracle to free the Jews, and then came out and did this miracle with the oil to show there was a miracle that was done to save the Jews. Okay? Okay? And therefore he says, he saw their evil that they wanted to defile the temple, God's temple. Therefore, he gave strength to the Chashmonaim, Shehem Kohanim Ovdei Hashem Behechala, because they were the people who served in the temple. And that's why they defeated the Greeks. Okay. So now we have an interesting idea here. What the morale is saying is the essence of the Rishus of Yavin was the fact that it attacked the temple. And therefore, those who protect the temple, the essence of the temple, the servants of the temple, which were the Kohanim, they were the ones who defeated the Kohanim. And it was of that victory in the saving of the Jewish people, with that victory, which is tied to the fact that the Yavanim tried to defile Judaism, that's what led to the victory of the Hashmonaim and so forth, and that was done through a miracle from God, and the Nerod were the indication that it was done by a miracle. Okay, and that's the essence of Hanukkah in terms of Hodah and Hallel. Okay, so how do we understand this? Okay, how does this all come together? So the fact is what exactly was the persecution of the Greeks? When we talk about Greeks, even in terms of civil war, what exactly was the persecution of the Greeks? Okay, so there were a few things that the Greeks did. One of the things that the Greeks did was they attacked Mila, right? They attacked circumcision. Now, the reason they attacked circumcision is because they felt that it was mutilation. Within Hellenistic philosophy, the human body is perfect. Because nature is perfect. If the body is the result of nature, nature is perfect. What exactly were the Jews responding to with that? And by the way, you know that circumcision was under attack again in San Francisco. You all heard about that? There's people in San Francisco who want to put it on a plebiscite at the next election.
In Europe.
Jews?
I'm sure Jews are involved.
Yeah, well,
mostly.
Not to mention female circumcision.
Well,
same kind of thing that we have now.
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing is they want to say that in San Francisco, no person below the age of 17 can be circumcised.
So then they'll be in an awful lot of pain after 17 years.
Well, the fact is that what they're basically doing is to attack the Jewish circumcision, to attack Mila.
And the Muslim too.
Right, and the Muslim too. And the basic argument for that is because it is it's a mutilation of a child, and the idea being that what right do you have to mutilate the child? What right does a parent have to mutilate the child? The fact is you sort of see that really what is behind it, because talking nature, but what's behind it is what's our argument to say you should do Mila? Our argument is that you do Mila. On the surface, if you think about it, how do you challenge that argument? You're doing something that's not necessary to your child, theoretically, attacking it. What right does a parent have to do this to a child? Especially in our society, there's tremendous limitations on child abuse, limitations on what a parent can do in terms of hitting a child, stuff like that. So it's like, so what right does a parent have to do this to a child?
Well, prevents HIV, but aside from that,
there's arguments both back and forth. There's medical arguments back and forth, and the official position of the AMA now is neither to say that it's wrong and neither to say that it's not that's good.
Which was a shift.
Right.
Because they used to say they shouldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there was a time
they shouldn't.
No, there was a time when they said you should.
Yeah, but the Pediatric Society said you shouldn't, and yeah.
Right. So now,
except if it was for religious reasons.
Right.
That was the Pediatric Society.
Well, what are you saying when it's for religious reasons? What are you essentially saying? Especially if you look at Mila. What do we say about Mila?
That it trumps, natural concern for the child.
Well, I mean, to an extent, we didn't really have a choice to be Jewish. We were born like this, and the child doesn't have a choice here.
Okay, but does that mean...
But the thing is, mankind does not understand everything, the limitations of mankind, that we have...
But they don't buy that.
Right. No, I'm just...
What we're saying, though, is something even more than that. If you look in terms of the concept of Mila, Mila is considered to be the perfection of the male. We talk about it in terms of it being mashlim, human beings. So now you have the situation where the Greeks said, person is born perfect. Nature says this is the perfect result of nature, or let's say applying the Darwinian concept of the survival of physics. This is the best result of nature, and we're saying no. We have been told by God that if we do this, this is perfecting the body, and not like that.
In other words, we're not born perfect, that we have to work at becoming perfect.
But the point is who told us that? The fact is you can't figure it out from reason. That's because we accept revelation. The challenge between the Greeks and the Torah perception was that aspect of revelation. It's the fact that Jews said, wait a second, that's not perfect. This is perfect. And everybody said, well, where do you get it from? Because God told us. There's no reason for that. So it becomes a challenge. Okay, so that would be the basis of some aspects. The difference with Hellenism from barbarianism or paganism was the pagans basically were into their own voodoo. Okay, and if you look at pagans, they almost look as hocus pocus as anyone else. It's like, Hades voodoo and stuff like that, stuff like the point out. But the Hellenists, the reason they were so powerful in terms of spreading is you actually had a sophisticated concept that actually supported reason. Okay? So reason sounds like, and reason generally is a good thing. Okay? So the point is, what do we say? No. We're not going with reason. We're going with revelation. Okay? So what does that make us? Makes us people... What?
Voodoos.
Voodoos.
Unreasonable.
Does it make it unreasonable?
Well, not going with reason. You're just believing in stuff.
So that becomes the great issue of Chanukah. You see, if God wanted to do a Nes Nigla, God could have done an open miracle. Right? 1, 2, 3, there's no reason here. Like Yul Brynner in the Ten Commandments falling into the throne that says, that is God, that's it, no questions asked. This is totally beyond us, and that's it. The truth is a lot of people, when they work within religion, they almost try to say, we're going to go into a different world. So sort of like a world of other things happen. Not a world of cause and effect. The essence of reason is cause and effect. And cause and effect allows us to use our minds. If you didn't have any cause and effect, you couldn't make logical deductions. So the point is, a challenge with total belief only in a religion and revelation is eventually you end up with a world of hocus pocus. Mm-hmm. And anyone using their mind can be ridiculed. That's why in many religions, it's almost like the desire for someone who was a town idiot, whatever, to be the one who brought the vision of the religion, right? Because it had nothing to do with reason. We wanted to make it emphatic that it has nothing to do with reason. And we like those stories. We like stories about how someone didn't know how to think and doesn't know how to read and so forth and so forth, but he just knows how to just pray to God or whatever, and we love that. But the fact is in the world of reason you have to think. So on one hand, if you start pushing towards an aspect of religion, it seems to challenge thought. On the other hand, if you only go with reason, you negate revelation. And that's a tension of Chanukah. Okay? And
there's also like a bit, even though it's totally, you can't find a defense for something like circumcision with reason, so a little defense for it is that it's not like you hear stories, some females who've been mutilated, and they talk about the trauma, and they're like they've been traumatized. It's been they've been suffering. There's no Jew who remembers being traumatized at birth. So that's a bit of a.
So what you're saying is, at the same point in time, we look at ourselves. I am someone who would have great difficulty. In our world today, if someone practiced female circumcision and there was a law in Canada that say, I'm against female circumcision, we should have no female circumcision, especially with extreme mutilation, I'd be hard-pressed to say, no, let's not have a law, freedom of religion should override that. I mean, I can understand why people say that.
But they're hurting them. Nobody's hurt. Like these, I mean, they're hurting.
But the fact is, but their argument is you are hurting them. The truth is the people who are against male circumcision, their argument is that you are hurting the child. It does cry.
Yeah.
Does cry.
You know what? They cry when you take your diaper off too.
Yeah, that's not the same.
And there's other arguments that lessen sexual pleasure in life. I don't know. These are the arguments that are presented. They're for the negative consequences of this. The point is that that's responded with other medical arguments. But the issue is once you're doing it, you're obviously starting to balance reason with revelation.
Yeah.
It's a tension. On one hand, you have the people totally bound by reason. On the other hand, we're not with them. We're not with the Greeks. Although we have a little connection with the Greeks because there is something positive about Yefet within Jewish thought. We sort of go a little bit with reason. The way out revelations, when I say revelations, way out irrational stuff, that we're really not into. We have to be sure about revelation to say it. But the fact is, our whole life, you look even in terms of Chanukah, it was done through Derech HaTeva. What the moral's saying is only at the end, just to sort of make the little point, even though throughout that time you fought with Derech HaTeva and you were going through nature, and you fought the Syrian Greeks in a natural way, and you were good guerrilla fighters, and you did all these things. It all looked like it could have been done through your excellence as militarily. So Kodesh Baruch Hu then says, hey, here's a little miracle to just remind you that I was around, I was sort of covering your back. So
how does that compare with Purim?
Even less. I mean, that's right. Very clearly could be just seen as some smart, politically aware Jews, maneuvered to get
the
the king.
Miracle, but.
Well, okay, so
with Chanukah you have like the Pashem.
Purim doesn't have. You see, what's interesting? What's interesting because Purim is the statement of Nesnister. There's nothing in Purim that really brings it because the point is Purim is the start. It's very, very interesting. The Shimshon Hirsch in the Choreb talks about the Purim and Chanukah, and that these are the two. Holidays that protect us in the galus. Okay, Purim protects us in the physically, and Hanukkah protects us spiritually. The galus means really we're among the world. We're out there in the world, right? So the point is the open miracles that exist in Israel with the Beis Hamikdash and so forth. That happened only in the first temple. Purim was really the start. And now you have to be in a world that's not going to have such open miracles. So the fact is Purim is that statement that says this is how you have to act in the world, right? You have to, you pray. Mordechai went to pray and so forth and so forth. But the whole movement is how are we going to deal with it? Therefore, it shows a chachma, shows a wisdom in dealing with it. Hanukkah is years later, and also did something with an aspect of.
Hanukkah was after Purim?
Yeah. Hanukkah was after Purim, and
Purim
years
was
later. Right. The fact is there when you get to Chanukah, it's like this reminder that God is still behind the thing. Because at this point in time, when you deal with the Greeks, and it's very interesting about the development of Purim to Chanukah, because in a certain way, what you have at Purim is the beginning of Jews dealing rationally with the world, in a certain way, dealing with the world in a rational way, and not relying upon open miracles. And at Hanukkah, you sort of have this statement where the world is coming back with rationalism, right? The world of Purim was most likely still a barbaric pagan world, which didn't have rationalism before the Greeks. And then you have the Greeks taking on rationalism, and then coming back and say, okay, here's extreme rationalism. So we have to sort of throw in a reminder that there is a God. So when we're dealing with this, with the fairyland of voodoo, we argue rationalism. God wants us to use reason, but we get to a certain point in time where reason's coming back to us. We say, wait a second, God sort of changes rules a little bit. Is it interesting? I could take this one step further. Rabbi Wolkenstein, he used to be the curator of the Jewish Library before he passed. He once gave a lecture years ago for Nishma, and in it he said he was attending a class at university, and a non-Jewish professor said one of the things that really shocked ancient, or really is a question within ancient historians, is how did the Greeks start thinking in terms of one God? How did they start getting involved in philosophy of one God? Right, where did they get this idea from? So he said that this non-Jewish professor said must be the Greeks and the Persians met in the Peloponnesian War, right? And with the Persians there were Jews. So it's quite possible that Greeks ran into Jews in the Peloponnesian War, right? And they started getting this idea of one God. And these Greeks went back to Greece with this idea, and that might have laid the seeds for the development of one God. So the truth is, according to what this is being said, is the rationalism of Greece may have come from the rationalism of Torah. So the fact is that Purim is to tell us, You can't rely upon miracles. There's a way of working in the world. You have to go beyond miracles. You've got to work through Derech HaTeva, through nature, and understand the hidden aspect of God. And then we get to Chanukah, we're reminded that don't go too far with that, to the extreme. You have to be reminded of God as well. I once had a teacher at YU of Nach who pointed out that if you remember, Haman says, I'll give you money for the war, right? He says, for the war. So he argues historically, and he actually a Jewish historian as well as a Nach prof, and he argued that was the Peloponnesian War. In other words, he argued that time-wise it's sort of connected to the Peloponnesian War, and that was the war that Haman was referring to.
Koresh was.
Something. The problem.
No, you're saying Achashverosh was, right?
Achashverosh, well, who Achashverosh was is a problem. The fact is that I've never really worked to that. There's another problem to all these things.
Wasn't it Xerxes?
People say Xerxes. There was another one. There's another one with an A leading into Xerxes. The problem with the whole analysis, the reason I never really got involved in it, is because there's a big problem between ancient history. We say the temple was destroyed in I think it was 420 BCE, and the Bayis Sheni was rebuilt in 350 BCE, and the Churban was in 70 AD. It's 420 years, because we say the Bayis Sheni lasted 420 years, and the Bayis Rishon lasted 410 years. The academics say that the Churban Bayis Rishon was in 586, and that means that according to them, there's some problems with working out these times. With us, the way we figure it out, 350, 420 might be around the Peloponnesian War. It's really, it sort of makes things work out and so forth. But the problem is that trying to connect it back to where they're arguing from, with 586 BCE being the destruction of the temple, you have challenges in terms of trying to connect the war. But according to what?
You have to see it on papers.
Right. Yeah. It's very problematic. There's actually there's an article by Rabbi Shimon Schwab, who was the Rav of the Breuer's community. He was a member of the Moses Gedolei Torah of Agudas. He was a pretty strong right-winger, and he actually had a BA in history because he was a Hirschian. And he maintained that Hirsch believed you have to study secular studies. He was a BA in history. And he wrote an article and says, what do you think, historians just play games? Historians know what they're doing. They're saying 586 BC. They have the reasons for saying 586 BC. So he presents the idea that really it was 586 BCE. And Chazal took away 150 years in order to confuse everyone trying to figure out the dates of the coming of the Mashiach. Okay, so in order,
but that would mean you would imply somebody would know what the number is.
No, he says when you work it out, you're going to get it wrong. That's the point. because okay. Anyways, okay. Where we're at right now, though, is that what happens in Chanukah is an interesting thing where you have a meshing of the Nes Nigla and Nes Nister. The Hashmonaim victory was done through nature, and you have a perception of the fact that we have this open miracle to remind us that there was a miraculous in the natural functioning of the world. The point is really what you have is this. What I'm leading to is the tension between rationalism and the human mind and the world of Torah. On the surface, that seems to be a tension. Greek says, if you're rationalist, you should be like this. We're coming around saying, hey, God said A, but at the same point in time, we have rationalism in our Torah world. You can't just say anything you want in the world of Torah. Right? You have a concept of svara, you have a concept of reason. So the fact is that in a certain way, that meshing of revelation and reason is really what Torah Shabbat Peh is about. That's really what distinguishes. If you look in terms of Christianity, they always had problems with the oral law. the rabbis. What did the rabbis do? The man-made law, right? That was a great attack of the Christians. If we want the fundamentalist way. We want, what does the Bible say? Okay, I remember my friend Rabbi Mike Skobach, who's a leading anti-missionary. He'll tell you that when he goes to challenge people and he's got someone on the ropes, they don't say I'm going to go home and think about it. They say I'm going to go home and pray about it. Right? It's always the idea of having this type of connection from the divine to direct you. We say you got to go home and think about it. It's more than that. Is we actually say HaKadosh Baruch Hu demands of us to think about it. Right? We have a concept of Lo B'Shamayim Hi, that even as we analyze Torah, we have to analyze it through Svara. And even if God comes down and says what's right, we don't listen to him. We say, hey, sorry, we've worked it out through reason. So really what Torah Sheba'al Peh is about is the connection of reason and revelation. It's what's here, because the only way you can understand Torah Sheba'al Peh is with reason. You have to have your mind to understand it. So I'm just and to see this idea, this is from the Hakdama of Igros Moshe. This is a statement from Moshe about something. It's absolutely a fascinating idea that he says here. It says, "Bezebi arti masha ism nachas tav chavtes amrav Yehuda amarav." Okay, he's going to tell over the famous story, the Gemara Menachos. It says, "Amrav Yehuda amarav, b'shah she'ala Moshe l'marom matzah lo kodesh baruch hu sheyoshe b'kosher ketarim la'otitz." When Moshe went up to heaven, he saw God writing ketarim, the little crowns on the letters, right? Amar lefan of Rabbi Nishma, Moshe says to God, Mi ma'akav al yadcha. Why is this important? What are you doing? Amar lo, so God says, I'll tell you why this is so important. Amar lo, Adam echad yesh. There'll be a man in the future. V'Akiva ben Yosef ben Shmo. Rabbi Akiva. She'atid lidrosh al kol kutz v'kutz tilin shel halachos. On every little mark, he will point out multitudes of new laws. Come up with new ideas all the time. Okay. And then Moshe says the Chora says the truth is I don't really get what he's talking about here. He says this language of Qatar, but kashish. He says doesn't understand. What he's really referring to the fact is that if you go through Shas and not Shas, but you never find anywhere that anyone's you never find a drasha Rabbi Kiva. You don't find anyone really doing drashas on the little marks. So what are you talking about here? But kashish shalas Moshe Makav. Why is Rosh saying? Why is this so significant? Makav Natsibah. So what is his point? The Masha Perish Rashi Lama Tasarach Lahosif Alehim Ain't Shach Lashanakim. That God says, why are you adding on? Rashi says, why are you adding on to that's not ma'akev. Ma'akev means it seems to be necessary. Okay? Datim hayashach kaviyachol liyot ma'akev yiksha lama lo zeh. Why are you doing it? Okay. No, I'm just going to. Okay. So he says like this. Okay, so he's going to say, he says, and if he was asking, why don't you just write it straight up, just say it straight, don't have all these little signs, just say it straight. What's his answer that Rabbi Akiva, and he was saying, why are you writing it this way, why are you putting little signs in it? The answer that, Rabbi Akiva will figure out things into the future, then that doesn't answer the question of why didn't God just say it straight. Okay, this he says. What I'm saying, I'm going to say why use the word crowns. Why are those little things on the letter called crowns? Why did he use the word crowns? Moshe is going to develop a whole new approach. Really, what's being said is that God made the letters of the Torah into kings. Because eventually will come around the wise person and make comparisons from words and come down to a halachic conclusion. According to his understanding of the reason or the meaning of the letters in the Torah. And when there's a disagreement, the answer will be worked out by the majority of the wise people of Torah. Even if they didn't get the truth. In other words, in the end, it's what the majority of wise people say. Okay, not even necessarily the truth. When we say Achri Rabban Lahatas, doesn't mean we're saying the majority reflects the truth. We're saying that you go after the majority. Oh, but they may be wrong? Okay. So they may be wrong. Okay. You still have to go after the majority. Why? Because it's the fact of their wisdom. It's a result of their wisdom. That's Kodesh Baruch Hu. That Kodesh Baruch Hu natan et the Torah Yisrael. Because God gave the Torah to Jewish people, Shiyasu kafi shiavinu et hakasav et hamusar, bal peh b'sinei, lefi havanatam. God gave them the Torah so that they can understand it according to the way that they understand it, to determine what it means. In other words, God could have given it over nice and simply. A, B, C, D, no questions. He gave it in such a way that to figure out what God meant, you have to use your mind, your reason. And God says, that's where I want to come out. It doesn't matter if you get it right, it's a matter if you think. And he doesn't give any more, he didn't explain more. And God doesn't make the decision in the Dinei Torah. He doesn't announce it. Why? Because it's not in heaven. What God is saying here is that Moshe is saying, why are you writing this? Why are you making why are you sort of making the words into so significant? You're not making it clear cut. You're making it, you have to play around with games and so forth and so forth. And God is saying, because I want the great mind of Rabbi Akiva to analyze this thing and come up with ideas. The human mind is significant. And they become the kings. The words of the Torah become the kings. Because we go according to what we think the Torah means to the wise people of Torah. Even though that might not have been what God wanted. You're right. Christianity, it's a man-made law. That's what God wants.
But when we talk about going according to the majority, I guess they mean the majority among people
of scholarship.
Of scholarship, not,
right. Right.
No,
okay. No. Okay. So it says.
And people of belief, I guess.
Of belief and faith. But the fact is the whole concept of Torah Shabbat Peh is the meeting of revelation and reason. It's the fact that in the belief in Torah Shabbat Peh, we actually call upon reason, and therefore our challenge with the Greeks, and the reason the Greeks had a problem with us is because we seem to be intelligent, seem to really have reason, yet we have this little mishigas called revelation that throws everything off. You have a bunch of voodoo guys sticking pins at the dolls. It's crazy. We have this real intelligent guy who's obviously great mind, Moshe Feinstein, Rishabir Soloveitch. I mean, these are great minds, and they're saying, well, we've got to take into account this revelation stuff. It doesn't make any sense. And in a certain way, it drives the rationalists crazy. Okay? It makes the Greeks more upset. And that's what they came in. They came in and said, we are going to attack you. We are going to metame the Heichel. We want to metame this philosophy. Because you're bringing in this revelation and plain reason. The rest of the world are a bunch of pagans. You guys are smart guys, and you're bringing around this stuff. So therefore, this is what really upset them. So they went into the Beis Hamikdash. They challenged they wanted to attack the faith. And that's why the example of Mila is a good example, because it's an example where you're bringing reason and revelation together, and we want to challenge this revelation because you are reasonable. And that's why in Hanukkah Hanukkah is the celebration of Torah Shabbat Peh, because it meshes that reason and revelation. We don't totally reject the Greeks because they bring reason. But the point is that we are different because we're reason with revelation. And therefore we're different because of Mila.
What I still find the most fascinating thing tonight is what you said about Elise Goldstein, what she wrote. No, I find it fascinating because I wonder, like, let's say we could have would have not let us, let's say the Hellenists would have won. So where she wouldn't even have a job today, like where would it?
But that's exactly what. But it's really
interesting.
It's really interesting, and it's a tension that we always deal with, meshing reason and revelation. And people want to get involved in religion and just jump into revelation, jump into faith, and I believe. The fact is that's not acceptable to us on a certain level, right? But on the other hand, the reasonable people get very, very upset with the fact that very intelligent people, being involved with this. It's like it's something that's.
Well, they try to rationalize a lot of things, like kashrut is for health reasons, and milah is for health reasons, and that's how they try to explain it to themselves.
The fact is, in the end, when I say thinking people, I'm talking about people who are Orthodox, who are rationalized. They say, I do it because I believe in God. Yeah. I believe God told me. Think about this. It's a very... I can only speak for myself. One of the things that always drove me crazy as a religious individual out there in the world, when I was in university and so forth, is that I really never wanted to be compared with the other religious people, right? Like the idea that I check my head at the door, okay? And on the other hand, people come to you, you're a bright guy, you got your head on your shoulders, you buy this stuff. Okay, that's a good question, but it always bothered me that they immediately assumed I checked my head at the door by being religious, and in a certain way that's where Torah Sheba'al Peh stands up, because it is the man-made law. Okay, it's exactly because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to be. We want to bring in the human mind into Torah, into what God wanted to do. Now, there's a whole question, why did God want to create it this way, and so forth and so forth. But the fact is, He wanted that meshing of reason and revelation. And the Greeks wanted to stand for reason. Okay, and therefore in a certain way, the point of Chanukah is we took it as far as we can with reason, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu finishes up by the shemen, by the oil. He takes it further. Just one last thing, since Mara referred to Yehudis and so forth. There's an argument, and this is why they say that women don't do malacha. A lot of women don't do malacha. Among certain women, not do malacha while the nerot are burning, at least for a half hour, because they say that the miracle of Chanukah actually began with the women, because one of the things the Greeks did is they established the rite of the first night, which basically meant that anyone who was going to marry had to go and sleep with the Greek.
How'd they rationalize that one?
Because
it appears in many cultures.
Right, it's blessing the family with his involvement.
That's voodoo.
So the fact is, and I think it's a very interesting. I'll tell you something. So the fact is that so the point is that Yehudis, who I think was from the family of the Kohanim, she was what she did is that she gave this guy, this why there's a minhag to eat cheese on Chanukah. Certain people eat cheese on Chanukah because what they did is she fed cheese to this guy. He fell asleep and he cut off the head, and that ended the whole process. There was this Greek guy who was doing this. Yehudis got him to eat some cheese, and basically got him to sleep. And while he was sleeping, she killed him, and that sort of ended this practice. That was an act of rebellion that started the whole rebellion by stopping this practice. So that's why they say women have a special chelik in the Chanukah thing, because it began with Yehudis killing this Greek general or Greek governor who practiced the rite of the first night. Just another side, I think Kohana would appreciate this, is Rabbi Walpole, who runs our blog, I think he heard it from someone, said, why were the Chashmonayim, why were the Kahuna so adamantly against the Greeks more than anyone else? Because the fact is because of this rite of the first night, the people who would be mostly affected by that is the Kohanim, right? Because the woman would be Yasin Kohanim. Therefore, the Greeks were really attacking the Kahuna, because it would totally mess up the Kahuna. Therefore, it was the Kohanim who led the war, which I found was an interesting perspective.